100%.
And that's what's so amazing is that I feel like you're like a perfect testimony of somebody who just was like, yes, here is this stress. Here's this stressor, right? Like you're surrounded by stressors, but like you weren't taking it into your body.
Absolutely.
And you did know the difference between right now I have to take action and you went versus, it's okay to stay calm right here and just observe this. Thank you for joining me for my first podcast episode last week. And I would like to introduce you to Julie here. We have never done a podcast. So I'm just letting you know that this in and of itself is part of both of us getting unstuck. We don't know what to expect other than that the light is going to continue to chase us and we're going to have to continue moving around from it. And there's one fly that won't leave us alone. So Julie started out as a client of mine and is now a very close friend of mine. And hopefully, if I'm really lucky, you'll end up being some sort of business partner because I could really use some help around here with this tapping thing. And I was sharing with you the last episode kind of how this podcast came to be and started a little story I didn't totally finish. And I wanted to finish it here just because part of my goal, well, it wasn't originally my goal, but is how stuck I keep getting, especially with this, and then finding new tools and new resources and how to just kind of climb up and out over it. And for me, a lot of this is going to be just winging it, and we have to just use what we've got, right? Just
Absolutely.
That's kind of, I think, a big thing that she and I have come through in our lives, and then also just getting to know each other as friends too, is we all want things to look a certain way and be a certain way, and sometimes you get that and sometimes you don't, and how are you going to navigate around it? So that's just a big part of it, and I shared that a podcast was never on my to-do list. It seems exhausting, and Julie got a glimpse of how stressed out I get about making sure everything is set up properly. And then the reason we're doing this in person is because my internet is completely unstable and there's no way to stabilize it with where we live. And so I had to completely set aside all of the interviews I had lined up that were remote, people in other parts of the country, and then say, who could I use that's local and do this a different route without internet? And I'm so excited it worked this way because I think this is a really perfect first interview. Is kind of really actually how I want it. And the first time I felt like I had this, like I have to do a podcast, I just, as a Christian, I shared with you that we are Jesus followers, not those rigid Sunday people. And I was like, get behind me, Satan, because I don't need one more thing to do. And then the next day, it was so clear that this was something I was supposed to do to kind of broaden my reach with tapping, because that's always my mission, is just getting it into more women's hands. And so the next day, I felt like God showed up and was like, hey, that was me. And I said, I'm sorry. And I just kind of moved forward with, how do I do this? Well, I really have a great team helping me set it up. But despite all those efforts, getting sick, dealing with my health, even just having this beautiful space that's my favorite space in the world, the way the sun comes in really distracts certain videos. We don't have internet. And so even just trying to get this on its feet and rolling has been a real challenge for me with how to bend and fold and when to quit and when to keep going. So bear with us. So this is exciting for me because you and I were at dinner 5 months ago or 4 months ago or something. And I knew you were going through hell, but we weren't tapping regularly at that time. We'd kind of passed our client time together, because that was pre-COVID is when she and I were sitting together on a regular basis. And it's not that we couldn't, it's just we weren't sitting together. And so I said to her, I was like, man, how are you doing with all of this? And that's when do you remember what you said to me?
I don't remember.
You said, wow, I'm so glad to know that I seem like I'm really doing okay, even though I'm going through hell, because I've been really intentional to be a person who's not constantly talking about everything you're going through, maybe, and I don't know if you use the word spewing, but I imagine the people, we all know them, or we've all been them, who have to tell our story over and over and over to everybody all the time. And then just becomes the only thing we tell. And so at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, you are really good at just being present in the moment that we're all together, and then kind of doing your life. And it wasn't in a sense of trying to hide what you're going through or trying to make your life look like it's all together. It wasn't that at all, because it wasn't all together, which wasn't your fault. And so it was very much like you were being intentional with myself and our friends to be present and to just choose joy and to have fun and to connect, and always giving us snippets of what was going on. So after that, I was like, oh my gosh, like we need to tap again. Like, just as your friend, I need to get you through this, because you'll share a little bit about what was going on at the time, which go ahead and just share a blurb about what was going on at the time, and then we'll go backwards.
Okay, so at that time, I was still like in the thick of it with my divorce with a narcissist, and there's some extra, little elements to that made it a little bit more difficult. He's well known in the city that I used to live in, and he's in law enforcement, and there's a lot of covering up, and there was a lot of just post-separation abuse that I was going through, and I have 2 little kids, and so there was just a lot on my plate. Okay, so you can take it back.
And you were going to have to move out of your home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the sale of our home that the kids and I lived in for 5 years, was being forced to be sold. And just a lot of like moving parts, a lot of variables. I didn't know if I was going to be able to stay on the Central Coast, or if I was going to have to relocate out of state to Texas. So there were like a lot of unknowns that I got very comfortable through tapping. I got very comfortable with just like living in the moment, and I don't know what's going to happen. And you know what? That's okay. And that is not my normal personality. That is, I usually wanted to know what was going on. I liked everything like on a checklist. So I just gave up all control, and I said, God, you take it. And he certainly did.
It was wild.
It was wild for sure. And that was like I was in the trenches, but also I was very intentional about not being emotionally led outside of me. Like, I wanted to be in control of my emotions, and for like the duration of my marriage, that was not the case, unfortunately. But tapping helped me overcome that, and be present, and tell my story different, and talk to people different, and meet people different. And that's like the beauty of it, because it's still me, but I'm a calmer version of me, and I'm more present, like you've mentioned. And I made a real, just a promise to myself that I wouldn't let someone who didn't know how to love me change me, because I'm loving, I'm lovable. I like to love on people. Like, that's just who I am.
No.
And so but I was away from that for a long time because of the abuse I suffered. So it was very important to me to not be like him. Like, I wanted to make sure that I didn't show up angry or vindictive or spiteful or passive aggressive. That was a big one, because you can appear to be like a good person, but then you really get those jabs in, and it really hurts, especially, women, and it's harder to make friends as we age, and those things are really important to me, and I make time for that. And so that was like instrumental for me, just to be present, and just to know, no, life is too short. Like, I have to show up in my full expression, whatever that means at the time, and I'm evolving still, So yeah, that was a really hard time. But I thanked everyone at the table. I'm like, wow, like, thank you for saying that. Like, because I used to dump, like, my cousin got the most of it. And then, some of my family and my friends, because I just didn't have control. I was just emotionally, in a whirlwind, like circling the drain. And I'm telling you, that's what tapping has brought me out of that. Yeah. And then I can just move through it. I'm no longer afraid to like cry in front of people or whatever. Like, I live big. Like, I laugh big. I cry big. Like, I love on people big. And I just experienced that because now I know, like, it's just fleeting. It's like an ebb and flow. It's not going to kill me. Suppressing it will actually kill you. And I battled back from horrendous mental health. It was like an F. Like, I grade my mental health, so I tell my friends a lot of the times, well, my mental health, it has to get a B or better. So I joke, but it's actually really true.
And so what's cool is that we all know, like I said, this podcast isn't going to be all tapping. The thing is, though, that's what I do, and that's how we met, and that's where all of my connections came from. I mean, mostly at this point, and how it so beautifully supports and undergirds every effort we're making, right? Everything going on, no matter who you are, what you're going through. And I just thought this would be such a beautiful way to kind of incorporate a woman who represents really probably half of my clientele is women who are trying to leave an abusive marriage with children, who have been pushed down. It's hard. It's really scary and it's really hard. And you kind of represent a big part of that group. But you're out of it. You're on the other side. And I think the first, maybe the second one I got to see completely in the thick of it, and then completely on the other side of it. Right. And I couldn't help, as someone who was part of that journey with tapping, going, oh my gosh, like this shit keeps working.
Yeah,
it's powerful. It's so really powerful is. Because it was that night that I thought back and I was like, we had 6 sessions. I bet we had 6. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm seeing on your social media and in our conversations, you were just a different person. And in fact, I had to reach out to her when I asked her if she would do this with me. I said, I was back on like a paper note-taking system at the time, and I just don't want to go find your notes. I know what drawer they're in, but I don't want to go find the exact little notepad. And so, what I wanted to ask, what was interesting was I was like, I don't even remember you.
That's
funny. What's crazy is when people ask like how we met, it takes a minute, like you were a broken, sad. I don't know if someone sent you to me. I don't know if you found me, but like you were sitting there, and I just remember mostly like your like presence, and how stuck you were. Mm-hmm. And other than that, you, as you are today, is like you said, like you live big and you laugh big and you love big. And it is true that is so much who you are, and so much good. Like people just flock to you. They just want to be with you, me included. And back then you were still like I could see, I love seeing in people what maybe they don't see yet, mm-hmm. but remind me and tell them, who was that girl on the couch that day? Because I don't even remember if you were divorced. I mean, I know you weren't divorced.
I was not divorced yet.
But if you were, like, I really don't remember the girl. I just know if we pulled out your notes, it was like sad, stuck, scared, sad, stuck, scared.
And there was also depression, and there was also terror, because I was stalked, and there was a lot of things, like he would come to to my window and then knock on it in the middle of the night. I would get up. We were living separately at that time, and so you picked up on that. I was not even aware of terror being like one of the things that I was terrified. Like I was living in that, and to live in that for an ongoing period of time is very hard. It's very hard to just your day-to-day routines. That was very hard. But back then we did a lot of work on my childhood, and in particular work with my mom, and having a narcissistic mom, and having a mom who told me that I was hard to love. So we did a lot of work surrounding that. And I remember an event that happened in kindergarten. I tell you about the event, and I start crying, and you're just like, okay. And, and I didn't know you, like, it was not like this.
I'm like, I'm so excited for you. I'm excited for you until you're excited for you. Keep crying.
Exactly.
And keep tapping.
Yes.
And you're going to get through this.
And I did. And so by the end of our session, I mean, it wasn't more than like an hour and like 15 minutes. I tell you the story. You said, okay, tell me again. And I tell you the story, and I'm like, I just tell you. And like, I wasn't crying. Like I was like, I just thought it was weird, because I'm like, wait a minute. I was just bawling like the 5-year-old that I was in that story.
Yeah.
And then now I'm just telling you the story as if it's like not even me attached to it. And that's when I knew, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so big. Like, this is so powerful. There were some other things that like told me, this is big. But that's tapping is the reason that I was able to self-regulate and get myself to a spot where I could be happy and truly authentically happy, and that I could be myself and find out who I wanted to be.
Through it all.
Because
your divorce is just now.
I mean,
weeks ago.
Just weeks.
And you and I decided it was probably 2019.
Yes.
That we sat together.
Yes.
And what's beautiful too about like God in all of this, just for any Jesus followers who are listening or faith-based people, is I never planned on this being a job. I thought I was going to be using this as like my secret little weapon in church settings with annoying little church ladies who kept telling their story over and over and over. And I wanted them to like tap and then stop crying like you did.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, they're done with their story. And instead it has ended up being this really big, really amazing thing with women. But partnering with God in it, like knowing that you were a woman of faith. And, you know, I really don't remember our sessions very well, other than that they looked like a lot of sessions. There's just a lot of sadness and fear and stuff. But a lot of the women I work with, which probably was you at the time, is we know God's good, but he just doesn't feel good in this.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've always just tried to just partner with God, knowing that he knows and sees everything.
Absolutely.
I just get to be part of the process. And it's interesting because I can want to like help all the women and save all the women, but I'm also still trying to be diligent with my time and my schedule and my family.
Sure.
And it's interesting looking back, because when we were at dinner that night and I was like, oh my gosh, like we really didn't have that many sessions together. When was that? Why didn't we keep working together? Well, you felt better. And that's the beautiful thing is, in fact, I'll have you share a little bit of that with me. But my point is almost immediately after that, I think my dad got sick.
Yeah.
Moved in with us.
Yes.
I took care of him through cancer treatment. I even moved my office out of my home into an outside space to just try to keep my sanity, sitting with people sometimes and getting away from sick care. And then we moved, and then we had a crisis for 2 years during the COVID crisis for everyone. And then, you know, we like popped out of it on the other side as friends. And so it was like, wait, looking back, like, how did this all start? And how are you the same person? Like, it's just so, but like how God just perfectly orchestrated that time for us together. And the way that you were, yes, tapping's powerful, but you were also saying like, I believe I'm worth this. I don't know what this is going to look like on the other side.
Yep.
I'm scared. I don't even really know my next move.
All of that.
Also traumatized. You didn't have your voice yet. You didn't have your power, your identity yet. And to know that like, man, you had a solid like handful of sessions. I really think it was no more than 4 in my memory, maybe 6. And then you were like, boop, on your feet. And it's because you wanted to be. Like, you wanted to be on your feet. You wanted your faith to work for you. Yeah. You know, you wanted to get through this and set an example for your children and protect them and love them. And you even wanted to love your husband through it too, even if he was going to remain broken, you know, and not willing to move forward. And just how cool it was to see that, like, God just reinforced all that for you. In that space, you know, you cleared out a bunch of stuff and there really was more room for. And this has been a nightmare. I can't believe what you
for sure.
and so many women go through. So tell me about what you did before tapping.
So I've been in talk therapy, you know, for years, different, you know, on and off. It was either individual or with my ex-husband. And what I didn't know at the time was narcissists can, you know, manipulate the counselor onto their side. And that happened. We went through, you know, 4 or 5 counselors, and I just continued going with one on my own. And she was really instrumental in helping me understand that I'm not asking for the wrong things. I'm asking the wrong person. But because of my faith, I wanted to stay married. I wanted to be a first and only wife. And that was just really important to me. And so I had that bridge to overcome, you know, to understand, you know, this is not a surprise to God. It's just a surprise to me. It's just that my marriage isn't going to work out. But that doesn't mean my life's over, because my identity was largely wrapped up in that, which is odd because the dynamic between my ex-husband and I never was able to shift into the wife that I wanted to be and the wife that I knew I was called to be. Yeah. So it was just interesting, like, having all of that play out. But I've tried so many different modalities. And that's why with the tapping, I knew I'm going to get certified in this. And so I just knew, just because of the shifts that happen so quickly. And when I say powerful, I do mean powerful, but it's like super gentle. And so that's like, I was missing the gentleness in my life. And so once I got through some of these shifts, I was able to provide gentleness for others. And so my biggest calling is, you know, being a wife and then a mother. And I love kids. I love my babies. And it's just so dear to my heart, so precious to me. And I really don't think we raise our kids. I think they raise us. I'm just so, just wowed every single day at like what my kids say and what they do and how they develop and how they blossom. But I had tried so many different things prior to tapping, and that's why I want everyone to know about it too. No, they get sick of us talking about it, but it's really important, and it works. So I want people to have something, and I mean, it's gotten me through so many things. Like court, I would just tap on my fingers, you know, just whatever. And sometimes you can't do this, but you
do
can do this in public. You can press and hold, and I've done that many times. But even being interviewed with law enforcement, like I would be tapping on my fingers, and I would be like scared inside, but then like it would calm me down. And then also my faith, because what I kept repeating in my mind, and the mind is so powerful, and I really have stepped into the beauty of that, and then dropping into the body as well, because it's all.
And we're not raised in a culture of like learn how to like be in your body.
No, it's not at all. You know, we're not raised like that at all. But what I kept repeating is, I don't trust the situation, but I trust God. And I used to say that about my attorneys all the time. I had terrible attorneys, and it was a lot of money. It was a lot of heartache on me. And like, I just kept saying, I don't trust my attorneys, but I trust God. And so the end of that story with my attorneys is I fired them on a Monday. I settled my entire divorce on a Friday myself. Walk into court, and, you know, the judge is on the bench. My ex, because he's in law enforcement, is speaking to the bailiff, and it's just me. And he's with his high-powered attorney, expensive attorney, and not me, I mean, through God, like, you know, got that done. And like the weight of the world just lifted off my shoulders. And I'm just so forever grateful, because that's not everyone's story. I still have, I'm in contact with a lot of women that I met from tapping group. And just some of my girlfriends, my childhood friends that are going through similar situations that were not as prepared as I was. And, you know, my heart just goes out to them. And I'm trying to get them on Zoom and just tap with me. Just let me, and, you know, just let me, you know, just let me help you get this tool. Like, you know, this can help you too. And so I think I think that as women, we need to see each other go through, like, just walk through hell and come out the other side and just be like, she did it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Because I know that, you know, I looked at other women and said, okay, look how happy she is. You know, she's living her life in her full expression. And that is just really, really beautiful. And I don't think I don't think we recognize it quite enough.
No, and I think that's something too, is like we get stuck on how we want something to look, you know, and I think that you were owed a lot more through that divorce, right?
Yeah, I was.
People would agree.
For sure.
And even down to like abuse, physical abuse.
Yes.
And that was ignored across the board, the whole court case. And so I think that that's part of it too, is that it's not, even though tapping can like really change a story and change the way we tell a story or change our perspective, it doesn't always, it can change our circumstances in huge ways, but it doesn't always change the circumstances that are at hand. And so to see you in that week, which I know I wasn't like physically with you, but we were in conversation, and you were being honest. You knew you could be honest with how you're feeling, but to, you know, most women would say like, oh, there's no way I could get up to that court date and then fire my attorneys. Like, you just don't, there's certain things you just like don't do. And, you know, one of them is like, well, you were posting on social media, you were posting on Facebook. I mean, she was really wanting people to know how, why she left, why you left, because you wanted to be a wife. Like, you're not an angry, mean woman who's trying to leave. Like, you know, and all of it was just ignored. She was threatened. Her attorneys telling her to just like take it down, stop telling your story, Julie. And then to the day that you were like, I fired my attorney, and that part's like what? Like max, like anxiety. Fear. Who does that? And that's what's so amazing about it is, one, why did the tapping work so well? For anybody listening who really doesn't understand the impact of it on a physical level, what was happening for you is you just kept your mantra, which was like, I don't trust these people, but I trust God. And sometimes it's just a choice, you know, to trust. But what's happening physically is you created a pattern of, even though the courtroom is scary, even though all of this is full of uncertainty, right here in my body, just in this moment, I'm safe. And so you had gotten your body to a calm place to where then the blood's in your brain, and the most clear thought that you could have had was, these people are actually a disservice to me at this point.
Absolutely.
Whereas a frantic, scared, anxious, dependent, you know, expecting those attorneys to actually show up as people who have your best interest in mind, would never do what you did. Absolutely. Because we're taught to trust the powers that be. Yeah, the professionals that have our best interests at heart, which who I found out. Paying a lot. Yeah, a lot. And so your body stayed calm, and you made a decision most people wouldn't make with full clarity. Yeah. That's the crazy thing. Like, it wasn't a rash decision. It was, this is in my best interest. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love, is that this isn't, it makes everything perfect and smooth. Sometimes it looks like making a decision we would never have made in a million years. And it's the only chance we have. That's the thing too, is like, we want to do things from memory and from experience and be able to count on them being the right thing and doing it. You're like, I just know that this isn't working for me, and I have to trust what's on the other side. Yeah. So you walked away with less than you deserved, but you got out with your dignity, mm-hmm. your pride. Mm-hmm. I mean, life's really, other than having upstairs neighbors.
Yeah, that's the only.
There's always.
That's really the only problem I have. And I've aged like 5 years in the last month. But also, that even having that spot was because of your best friend, yep. who said, "Hey, my friend is
who knew someone."
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, everything was so aligned.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that you talk about like what physically happens in your body, and people don't often enough. They don't. Match your emotions to like physical pain in your body. Yeah. And I have fought back from being like almost bedridden and having some severe health problems. And I'm backtracking all of that. And with that comes working out those emotions that people just don't connect those dots. But it's so important to do so. But when I fired my attorney, I can tell you that like my shoulders and the tension, it was just like lifted off of me. I just knew. I didn't know how I was going to get on Friday. I didn't really know. And the funny part about that was, like, in my mind, I had a backup plan. Because I have, I'm a woman. We multitask. We have, plan A to Z already. And so I had another plan to get another attorney. But it was going to be, so Friday was a court date. But then Tuesday, our house was going to close and I was going to get some money. And so on Tuesday afternoon, after the house funded, I was going to go and pay and retain another attorney. It turned out I didn't need to, because I was able to negotiate everything that I, wanted and, decided, my dad used to tell me too, Julie, it's just money. It's just money. Because my mom had an unhealthy relationship with money. My dad, not so much. But I learned, most of the things that have served me well from my father. Mm-hmm. And so when those things, like, he's been gone for 8 years now, but those things like really
came back.
They really do. They can, and I could hear his voice telling me, Julie, it's only money. Shine them on, baby doll. It's okay. So I remember these words that he told me, and I would just keep thinking about those things. And money is a renewable resource. Like, I can go make money anytime I want.
Yeah, you didn't lose your ability to work.
I didn't.
Which actually brings me to kind of another point I wanted to just touch on, because we will touch on it a lot here in the future, is your physical health. And because I didn't believe this, and now I do, is that 85% of physical disease is held up in our bodies because of our emotions that
Absolutely.
are stuck. So what I would have expected to see from a woman who didn't have such a powerful modality, maybe didn't have a faith, your body, because you've struggled with some health stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you mind sharing some of your diagnoses, or just throw a couple words out there women will connect with?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I think I've gotten rid of it, but Hashimoto's. Also, I had an autoimmune disease called antiphospholipid syndrome. And so what that is basically, where like when I got pregnant with my two younger children, I had to be on blood thinners throughout the first 3 months, because my body sees the baby as an invader and will basically starve off from the umbilical cord, so the baby passes away. And so that's why I had frequent and recurring miscarriages. So, but that is, I no longer test for that. So I believe that has been cured. A lot of my arthritis is like less rheumatoid arthritis. And so I really do believe in the connection between emotions and how it's going to show up in your body. And as I'm becoming healthier and becoming more of who I was designed to be, and who God created me to be, I'm stepping into that. I'm finding my health like so much better. Yeah. And like, also
was there a PCOS or an endometriosis?
Endometriosis, yes.
Okay. And breast implant illness.
So yes, I went through that, and that's when I was like at my worst, like bedridden, like just like bad. Like, it was hard for me to get up in the morning. I just couldn't, my favorite thing to do was I need to get back in bed. Was never rested, had insomnia. Now I sleep, with the exception of like sometimes my upstairs neighbors, someone in the household stays up till 4 a.m. and
somebody find her the right place to live, please.
And then someone goes, whoever works in the home, they get up at 6 and I hear their alarm clock. But with the exception of that, I sleep wonderfully now. But
like what I'm seeing though, because I see this all the time, is that people who aren't doing their work and don't believe in themselves and continue, because you did continue to get, you divorcing a man who's you were in a marriage with that you're trying to get out of, you're still very much married to that person, and it gets uglier and worse through a divorce, right? So that usually what I see is a woman's health get worse and worse over time. And I think you listed 5 different diagnoses, right? So over all of that, with the stress, because the stress spikes, we have an oversecretion of cortisol, organs, systems actually start to like shut down, is that over that 3 years,
3 years,
you could have gotten sicker and sicker and sicker.
For sure.
So what's interesting is that not only did you not physically decline, but you actually physically thrived.
I did.
And that cannot be done no matter how much physical work you're doing or emotional work you're doing without your nervous system being regulated. 100%. And that's what's so amazing, is that I feel like you're like a perfect testimony of somebody who just was like, yes, here is this stress, here's this stressor, right? Like, you're surrounded by stressors, but like you weren't taking it into your body.
Absolutely.
And you did know the difference between right now I have to take action and you went, versus, it's okay to stay calm right here and just observe this. Yes. So I think that's such a crazy testimony of your physical health today is better than it has been, when really it could be tanking.
And so that's another reason why I feel so blessed to be in my situation, to be thriving, because some of my girlfriends are not in that situation. And there was a lot of intentional steps. Typically, when I was at my worst, I would go and work out and lift weights twice a day. And that was putting more stress on me. Yeah. And so I have learned, I'm listening to my body, and I don't judge myself, and I don't judge others for what they're doing. Yeah. That's what they need to do. So I have learned so much about honoring my body and getting back into my body, and my body needs to rest today, or I'm only doing hot yoga today, or I'm going to lift weights, or I'm going to go for a walk on the beach, something like that. Yeah. Whereas before, that wouldn't have been enough. It wouldn't have been enough. Yeah. I would have not punished myself enough to feel good. So it's a mind shift too. And so that perspective is really important for wherever people are on their journey. Mm-hmm. That's just important to like whatever they might need at that time to be mindful of.
Yeah. So before we close up, I want to know, I know where I think you're going to be really gifted working with people with tapping. And I'm so glad that you're going to do that, because I notice the more I do this work, the more women I see come through who are very similar to us. And then in times that I've hired somebody, because we all really, I don't think, should be doing our deeper work. I don't think we really can. We need to hire somebody who can kind of look at our container and kind of hold us. I always say like we're the ball going down the bowling alley, and like the practitioner is like the blown up little bumpers kind of keeping us here. And because it's like in our conscious mind, our subconscious mind, we can't really be involved the way we need to with sorting out this work. So I've actually, my list of practitioners who I think are really powerful with tapping specific has gotten smaller. I'm seeing more people want to get certified. I'm seeing more people get this tool in their hands, and I'm seeing the list of people who are really good at it get smaller. The list of people who I would trust to hold space for me isn't very big. And you're somebody I trust you even right now with what you know to sit with me and hold that space for me. So I'm really excited, because I would love to have more women who are really gifted and who have done the work to be helping people with this, not just me, not, make more of me, but like to have the heart that you have, the experience you have, and knowing that when someone sits with you, they're in really safe hands, and that you have experience, you really have experience with hard life and this work. So who do you really see yourself working with?
Okay, this might surprise you, but I'll go through it. So for sure, women like that are in an abusive relationship with a narcissistic partner, that's so near and dear to my heart because I didn't have some of that support, and it could have changed the whole trajectory of my life to have that support. And that's just like so tender to me. So definitely that. And then maybe women that don't have the support, maybe going through, if they might choose to stay, but in their marriage, or they might choose to exit, but either choice is hard. It's not easy. You're not working with a normal person who can work on their issues and do a deep dive for themselves. So that's really close to me. But also, so kids too. I just love kids. Like, I was born to be a mom. Like, I knew that. Like, I was a mom young, but and older. But that's like giving kids these tools can help them in ways like we probably couldn't even imagine, because if they don't have to go through the same chaos or trauma, or even if they do have to go through some of it, they can work themselves through and regulate themselves. Yes, absolutely.
And then whatever they work on today doesn't get carried on past the point of the tapping. Yeah.
And the third little group I would like to work with is men who truly want to do the work, who maybe are in a relationship or want to be in a relationship, but they just don't have the skills. They just don't have the skills because of what's holding them back. And I have a heart for men because of how society sometimes treats them, and how I don't think they're disposable. I think men are so valuable. I love men. I love men that show up in their full masculine expression, which means nurturing and caring and protective. And that is just so important. It's important really because I think my dad was like that, and my mom was so harsh on him. And to witness that, if my dad had a little bit more, if he had more skills and more support, I don't think that means you're weak. I think that means you really want something to work. So I would like to work with, men maybe that their wife is asking for more from them, or they just don't feel like they can give it, or that they're nagging, or, that it can really shift the man's perspective. And then he leans into his woman, provides that stable environment. And then, they go on to have children, and they have a strong family unit, and strong family units are what it's all about. It's God's design, and it's tender, and it's near to my heart, and it builds, but not only better families, better communities, a better world. And I just think that's super important.
It is. And I always say it's a perfect tool for men, because a lot of men's first trauma is dad telling them not to cry about it.
Yeah. And that hurts my heart. Yeah.
And it's those first things and those worst things that stick with us the most. And so the second therapy is mentioned. A woman might be really desiring to have healing in her relationship, or even just to grow, but because we know how triggers work, right? It throws us back into those events as children, whether we realize it or not.
Absolutely.
To him, he might be afraid of showing those emotions, or afraid of crying, because that's what a lot of us think therapy is. And then that first voice is dad saying, grow up, be a man.
Absolutely.
Toughen up, don't cry. And it's so sad because like you said, a man in his full masculinity is tender, and I have needed to see my husband cry at times in our marriage and in our life raising children. It's not easy. And so I think that's beautiful, because I've always said this is the perfect tool for men, because as women, I think that we dialogue more and we're verbal processors, but then the tapping helps to kind of shift that story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas a man who might not want to tell the story or relive it, who wants to be a man of little words, can still do the same amount of work as someone who's going to do a lot of talking.
Yes.
Because we're feeling that feeling, right? Feeling the feeling, and then tapping and really shifting it and moving it. And so it's like you said, it's gentle. I would say it's gentle, but it's rapid. How can you get this job done so quickly with it also being so gentle? And, we're talking about a lot of heavy things. But what's so cool is really, I say the first goal with tapping is just neutralize those charges. Get dad's voice out of your head, because whatever those triggers and charges are, neutralize it. Get to that point you're telling the story or not telling the story with just this this baseline. Yeah. But we really shouldn't end there. We should end at that place where you're saying, where these men can be more emotionally connected, and their women can maybe be softer in response to that, and really provide this goodness, right? More connection, more goodness, more joy, more happiness. And I know I'm the only one in my relationship tapping. My husband's not into it, but he's supportive of it.
Right.
And when I do the work, he responds because I'm moving and I'm changing.
Your energy shifts. Absolutely.
My energy shifts.
And then you can move into whatever role is meant for you to be in, and then he
just responds.
Absolutely.
So
it's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you're going to be working with men because I think there's a need for that. And then, you know, I'm sure that there's a way to put in the notes here how to contact you. Are you willing to let women contact you who might be looking for a little bit of support?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do that, and then if you'd like to hang out with myself and Julie on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock California time, we have I have a tapping group every single Wednesday, 10 o'clock California time, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and it really is just women showing up, video, audio, on or off, it doesn't matter, and we really just tap for 1 hour together for once a week, and it's just a place where, you know, you can kind of get your toes wet or kind of get some work done, and it's just a really safe environment. And so that's a great place to connect with us also. Thank you for doing this with me.
You're so welcome.
I just think that if we can just get this tool into one more woman's hands, and even that woman who doesn't know yet that she can get on the other side of this,
yes,
and really not lose herself, in fact probably find herself.
Absolutely find herself. Yes.
Yep.
So worth it.
Yeah. So stay tuned for next week's episode, where I actually get to bring you a client who's quite opposite. He's a young man, and his journey through physical diagnosis and also some real emotional turmoil has been so beautiful to witness. And so I'm excited to bring him to you and just show you that this tapping tool can help anyone, anywhere, anytime.